Well, thank you guys for tuning in today. We have a special day, a special guest with Scott. It's his birthday. It's his 50th birthday.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So a lot of celebrating, a lot of wisdom, I feel like, that you're going to be able to share with us today that you've learned over, because you're 50 today, but
Yes.
you've been in ministry for 30 years?
Over 30.
Over 30.
Yeah.
So that's pretty impressive.
I was basically 18, 19 years old.
That blows my mind.
Yeah.
I don't think I could have handled that at 18, 19,
Well, I didn't know
30,
what I was
40.
doing. No, I didn't know what I was doing.
Do you know what you're doing now?
No, still don't have a clue. And actually, I think that's what the Lord wants us.
I think at 18, the difference is you don't know that you don't know what you're doing.
Oh,
but
wow.
at 50, you know then that you don't know what you're doing.
Well, yeah, and I heard this yesterday. My mom actually told me this. 50 is actually an old man's youth.
Okay.
So I'm actually entering into the youth of an older man. So in reality, it means, okay, I got some wisdom then
Yes.
through experience.
Yes.
And really what I'm finding is the more I grow with God, the less I know. I know what I know.
Right.
It really is a crazy dichotomy. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of me thinking that I knew some formulas or some secret patterns of everything,
Mm-hmm.
no, now everything is just like, okay, let's just follow Jesus and see where he's taking us today.
Yeah. That's hard though. Like
Yeah.
that's hard when you're starting out in the ministry mindset, right? That's unfathomable.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make sense to our carnal minds, right?
No.
Because you've got to have a method, you've got to have a program, you've got to have a checklist, you got to have all
Your
those
principles, the
Yeah.
biblical principles, and
Oh,
all of
yeah.
that stuff. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but now you're saying that you're just learning to just rely on Jesus and you don't throw things away, you just don't use them outside of when Jesus prompts us, right?
Right. Well, one thing I'm learning, is that when Jesus said, if you're actually going to follow him, the first thing you do is you deny yourself.
Mm-hmm.
All right, take up your cross and follow him. Then he says this unique thing. He says you've got to enter into a narrow, difficult, constraining, compressing door, because that's the way to life. So anything that's hard and anything that's dark and anything that's pressing is actually where the Lord's at. Oh, by the way, while you're doing that, I want you to become like a child.
Right.
So go into something scary and be like a child in the midst of it. So what I'm finding is, if you're like a child, you lose all sense of plans. You lose all sense of formula, and you really don't know anything.
Right. Well, that's like being a lamb led
Yeah.
to slaughter,
Right.
right? You're just going where the Lord leads you.
Right. Well, and I think even me and Reggie and Marcy were talking about this before when we got here this morning. We're in our culture of everybody is crying out for something called revival. Everybody's
Mm-hmm.
crying out for something called awakening, and no one has a clue what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, we had this whole conversation is, again, because we hear it all the time. We want revival, and then what we happen is instead of wanting an actual revival, we want an actual event.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of revival, we're wanting events.
Well, I think that's the way that it's been defined inside church culture, is that revival is an event,
Yeah.
when actually revival is not an event. Can you not hear me?
It says mic is still turned off.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
Sorry. Anyways, when you want to talk, we'll share.
Okay.
Okay. So we think of it as revival as an event,
Mm-hmm.
but why are we looking for an event anyway?
Well, and don't you think that cry for revival is really just the prompting of the Spirit to tell you that there's more that you haven't tapped into yet, and it's really maybe just an invitation, but we don't understand what to do. We're trying to fit that invitation into our carnal mind and into what we've seen done in the past, so that we know how to step into it, but that's not what the Lord's doing, right?
So whenever you say that you're trying to fit revival into your carnal mind, or your carnal mind's trying to wrap itself around revival,
Right.
what does that particular process break that down for somebody that they're thinking like they don't even understand the carnal mind?
Right.
So to break that down and explain that.
Well, for one, the carnal mind tells us we have to have an emotion attached to the revival, right? We have to have an emotion, a euphoric type of feeling. And number one, that's not always the Lord. Like you said, he calls us literally to walk through the hard places, to walk through the valleys, to die to self. And so that doesn't feel good, but I think again with our culture, we think revival has to be a bunch of people, jumping up and down and rejoicing. And I'm not saying there's not room for that, but true revival, in my opinion, is getting another glimpse of the Lord.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop.
Yes.
It's a continual process of moving forward with where the Lord is leading and hopefully bringing people with you.
Yeah.
Like that's what we're called to do just as people. So maybe instead of saying we need revival, maybe we need disciples.
Right. Well, think about this. Even if what people think a revival is, will you know it's there when it arrives?
Right.
You see, what we're doing is we're looking for something that God is doing instead of looking for Jesus.
Yes.
So maybe what people are doing by always crying out for revival, they're actually crying out for more of the acts of God instead of the Lord himself.
Yes, we're not perceiving him.
Right. And so if that's the case, can you worship revival or worship awakening and completely miss the Lord?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yep.
What do you think about that, Rich?
Well, during Jesus' time, Jesus went and healed the sick. He raised the dead. He cast out devils. He even told his disciples to do the same thing they did. They saw a move. We were talking about earlier that people, we have an expectation of a move of God.
Yeah.
We want to see God move. We want to see people heal. We want to see cancer dissolve. We want to see people coming to Christ and getting saved. We want to see all these things. We want to see our loved ones getting wrecked by the Lord. We want to see all these things. We want to see all of these acts.
Yes.
But when Jesus said, "Do you want to eat? If you have to follow me, you have to eat my flesh and drink my blood."
That's
and
it.
everyone that was following the move ran away.
Yes.
Yeah. There you go.
Yes.
Everyone that was following the move ran away. And then he even looked at his disciples and said, "Are you going to leave me too?" And they said, "No, we have nowhere else to go. I mean, you ruined our reputation. We weren't following the move. We were following you. And when we were following you instead of the move, it ruined our reputation. Only you carry the words of life. We have nowhere else to go now."
So good.
Yes.
So revival is, if you want revival, you're saying you're dead.
Yes.
Yes.
And a dead person never cried out for revival because they're dead.
Right.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
But so if you're saying we need revival, you're acknowledging that you're dead also. You're acknowledging that you're dead, but the Lord, he awakens us to love. And a lot of times people, they want a move of God, or they want an event, or we want to see things with our natural eyes to confirm that the Lord is doing something. But Jesus even told Thomas, "Blessed are those who believe and not see."
Yeah.
See.
Yes.
And it's believe in the person of Jesus.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And that's what it's all about.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Whenever I think of revival in those terms, then what is it then that we need to be perceiving, in order to, and it's not that I'm trying to say that, we're looking for an outward show, but if there is a true revival, what would mark that?
Yeah.
And it would literally be people laying down their life.
Yeah.
That is like the biggest mark of revival. It's not the big, the loud shouting and, all of that is, and again, like you said, there's a place for all of that. But true revival is marked in how quickly are you willing to lay down your life so that you can enter in through the narrow gate.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not at all what the church culture has made it out to be.
Right.
Well, and that makes me think too that true revival then is going to be marked with persecution,
Oh yeah.
you know, with offense, with people, with your reputation being ruined because you're no longer conforming to what this world wants you to be,
Yeah.
but you're actually following after Jesus, and so there's going to be backlash.
That's so true. You know, because the Apostle Paul was a walking revival.
Right.
Yeah.
All
Yes.
right? So because he had an understanding of who Christ was, he was the one who penned, "I'm dead and hidden in Christ who's in God" in Colossians 3:3. But so if Paul was walking revival, he was actually a walking container of the revelation of the person of
Yes.
Jesus.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
he was constantly always showing people who the Lord is. And what happened, because he was a walking container of revelation, so revival in its essence is the revealing of Jesus.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's it.
So
That's it.
wherever Paul went, he revealed Jesus. And what did it do? Two things happened wherever he went. It always brought revival or riot.
Yes. So true.
So if Paul walked on the scene, riot would occur, persecution would happen. It's actually the persecution would actually confirm his apostleship.
Right. Yes.
It confirmed his being a father, it confirmed his being a revealer. So in essence, in our church culture today, because we haven't really truly known the person of Jesus, we have looked for him in things that he was not there.
Right.
Yeah.
And most of the things I honest to God believe in all of my years of ministry, I believe the Lord is in more things that most people think he's not.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's maybe not where we think he is,
Oh, God.
or where we think he should be.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I was thinking this morning, talking about the acts of God versus the ways of the Lord. And it brought up the gifts of the Spirit as opposed to the fruit of the Spirit. I don't exactly know my thought pattern in this, but I do know that that's where it landed me. And you think about the gifts of the Spirit, they're freely given. And for whatever reason, this light bulb went off in my head this morning, and I realized, oh my goodness, the gifts are going to be there whether we're following Jesus or not.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's
Absolutely.
right.
The
Yeah,
gifts
that's
are
right.
going to be there whether the Lord is there or
Yep.
not. And he will, for the sake of those who are receiving the gifts,
Yes.
come. But the one who is actually bestowing the gift doesn't necessarily have to be aware or even walking with the person of Jesus.
Yeah.
Whereas with the fruit of the Spirit,
Right.
that only comes through abiding.
Yeah.
The fruit of the Spirit only comes through walking with the Lord, laying your life down so that his life, and that's the true fruit, his life
Yes.
can come forth. What does his life look like? Patience, love, peace, kindness, gentleness, long suffering, self-control, faithfulness.
Yeah.
Those things are true markers, the true markers.
That's so good.
You know, this reminds me of a conversation that I had with the two of you recently about this person that like, I don't know that they call themselves a prophet, but a lot of people call them a prophet, and they operate in such a high level of like words of knowledge and that kind of thing. And so I had asked you guys, I was like, well, why are they not a prophet? And Marcy said, because they don't point to Jesus. And it's like immediately this light bulb went off, and I was like, oh my gosh, they don't point to Jesus. Like they operate in the giftings,
Yes.
but they're not focused and not drawing the focus of the people to the Lord.
Right.
It's to themselves. And isn't that what gifts do when it's not operated, with that humility of being led by the Spirit?
Well, one of the biggest things that Brad says all the time is that whenever you're walking with the Lord, the gifts happen and you're not even aware of it.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Like
Yeah.
the gifts happen when you're walking with the Lord and you don't even realize that you have actually just operated in a gift.
Yeah.
And it's because you're not other people focused, although you are in a sense because you're loving and you're serving, but your main focus is Jesus. It's not how can I operate in my gifting. You see the shift in the focus there. It's so different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking from like a scripture reference is You know, the Church of Corinth, they were the most gifted church, but yet the most fleshly.
Yes.
Because like they had all the gifts, and Paul like congratulated them of walking in the gifts and affirmed what are the gifts of the Spirit and things like that. But yet they weren't walking in true submission to the Lord.
Yeah.
And like in one of those things, like Paul said, I've not come to with like enticing words, and that like he said, I come to know nothing else but Christ and Himself crucified. It was totally going against of what they were focused on. They were focusing on this credibility or street cred with this apostle, where I'm of this, I'm of that, or I'm part of this person, or they're flowing to give some words of knowledge, but yet they reject the one they first loved, and that was Jesus.
Gosh, we're still stuck there, aren't we?
Well, you think, you know, the carnal mind is enmity with God, and the carnal mind is rampant in charismatic Christianity, because again, think about it. The carnal mind loves formulas. The carnal mind loves measurement. The carnal mind has a view of success. Even the carnal mind has a view of revival. So we ask the question, what is revival? What is awakening? My thought is this: if you can define it, it means you don't even know it. Because in reality, what people are crying out for, we send revival. No, you're saying, send us your acts. We want to see the stuff.
Yes.
We want to see the people be baptized. We want to see the healings. We want to see that in essence, you'll miss the Lord. Because how many times have we, again, I've been in this a long time. I've seen revivals. I've the Brownsville, the Toronto, you know, the outpourings in Kentucky or Florida, different places like that. And you see these moves and you see these manifestations, and hundreds to thousands would flock to them, and then they would fold. And then people would start constantly saying, I can even just say with Brownsville revival was a powerful move of God. But that's it, it's gone.
Yeah.
You can't go back there. And there's some people that make movements monuments and worship the movement instead of worshiping Jesus.
Yeah.
So what happens when they cry out for revival, they're saying, we want what we had. So take us back to Egypt so we can have the onions and we can have what we did there, because we want to experience that before, instead of understanding we want Jesus, because if we truly have the real Jesus, we don't know where He's taking us. We don't know what's going to happen. And that's really what, in essence, think about. What if revival is just simply waking up to knowing who He is?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's
it.
it.
We
That's it.
complicated.
Oh my
You
God,
complicate it.
complicated.
But that is being childlike, though.
Yeah.
That is being childlike, like waking up excited with what your Father wants to do today, you know, and we get into fear with that because we want to see the works. We want to get all of the, you know, confirmations. We don't want to step out in faith.
Right.
We're backwards. It's you step out in faith, following the Lord, and those things come after, like we've been saying. They come after, and you may not even see them, but it doesn't matter if you see them or not, because you're walking with Jesus.
Right.
Like, how can you, like, who cares what's going on behind you when you're in His presence? You just want to stay there.
What if revival is getting smaller instead of larger?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, now
That's it.
wouldn't that mess up the system in America?
Oh yeah, that would.
Yeah.
I mean, because think about
Bigger
Rachel.
is better.
Bigger. We think bigger is better. We think that numbers equate success.
Yeah.
And what if, in God's eye, again, which we know God's completely upside down. Slow is fast, fast is slow.
Yeah.
Large is small, small is large. Everything's completely opposite. So when we cry out for revival, we're actually crying out for an event, and we measure the success of the revival in the amount of people. But I've found this. I've been to large meetings. We were just talking about this earlier. We've been to big conferences that were called revivals. They were called awakenings, and you felt the presence of God there. But then I would be in a much smaller place, like when we were at our reunion in Raven Falls. A couple hundred people there. There was more. Man, the Lord smoked us all. I mean, like, and I asked everybody. I said, which one would you trade?
Yeah.
Yeah. again, but the carnal mind would value revival in the amount of people, but in God's perspective, everything God does is actually in seed form.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if everything's in seed form, that means everything begins small.
Yeah.
So why do you think, Rich, because I know you've been in this a long time, and being a worship leader, you've ministered in big places. Why do you think that people are drawn to that? All like the glitter and all the crowds.
Yeah.
What is that in your perspective?
Well, I think we all have a drawing to something spectacular.
Yeah. Oh,
I think we all have a drawing to something spectacular, and I don't think it's wrong to like the spectacular. I don't think it's wrong when we see God do something crazy, like whoa, it ministers to our soul.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, when we follow the Lord, it has to be spirit to spirit.
Yes, yes.
It has to be spirit to spirit. A lot of times when we see something ministering to our soul, we stay in the soulish realm, I think.
Oh, that's
And when we stay in the soulish realm, we want God to just meet us in the soulish realm.
Yeah.
But Jesus told, like at the woman at the well, he said, those that worship the Father must worship him. They can't hear me.
Yeah.
In spirit and in truth.
Yeah.
And so when we begin to worship the Lord in spirit and in truth, then we begin to realize who he is, follow him, know his ways. And when we begin to do that, we begin to see like, okay, this is Jesus I'm following, not the crowds, not all these ideas. The disciples, their mind kept getting bamboozled.
Yes.
Because of the Lord. They're like, well, he's doing this, we sing all this, and then now he wants to run away. Like, what's going on? A lot of people come, he's drawing, he's feeding 5,000, then he wants to run away. Like, Jesus, make up your mind. Do you want to touch the people, or do you want to like win the people's hearts, or keep running away? What are you doing? And he said, I'm only doing what I see the Father's.
There you go.
That's the key of true revival. I believe authentic revival is
You're
just following him.
Yeah.
And the person of Jesus.
Yeah.
Following that man.
That's it.
But yeah.
Well, and as you're speaking about that, it reminded me of like John 17 and just the understanding. I just had like this understanding that true revival, yes, it's going to bring some persecution, right? It's going to bring that kickback, but it's also going to bring unity.
Yeah.
Like true unity, because we're all going to see him corporately together as one, and it's going to create bonds that are not going to be easily broken.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be able to go to a place, receive something individually, go home, and not be connected to those people anymore.
Yeah.
Not true revival.
Being bound by love.
Yeah.
You know, I guess I just want everybody to understand is that there is, again, the carnal mind is always pulling. The carnal mind is enmity with anything God is at. So the carnal mind is always going to even try to move in a church, in a ministry, by trying to add a level of what they define as God.
Yes.
So the carnal mind will always try to define God as, honest to God, an event. And what event-minded Christianity is we try to create events for experience.
Mm-hmm.
But in the kingdom, it's the experience of God that manifested the event.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been trying to cultivate events to create God instead of looking unto Jesus, who is the originator or the author and the perfecter of our faith. I even just with me personally, I love the big meetings. I mean, they're great, and they're all, but I think sometimes we miss the Lord, because I've been to these big meetings, and you've got the successful lineups. And by the way, I'm not trashing big meetings, okay? Please, I don't want no nasty emails, okay? I'm not trashing big meetings. They all have their place.
Absolutely.
All right. But what I'm saying is, let's stop trying to define what we're crying out for revival. Even like we say, America shall be saved. Well, how do we know when it's saved?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, really, do we have a defining moment when it's actually saved? I mean, so if we're crying out for revival, how do you know if you're not in it now?
Right.
So in essence, what if revival is simply having a renewed mind to knowing Jesus personally? And you can have revival in your car, you can have revival in your home, and you can have it in a small church. You can have it shopping for groceries. I call it walking epiphanies with the Lord.
Yeah.
And have you ever, and I'm sure this happened to you guys, have you ever just been walking somewhere and all of a sudden you just like, the goodness of God hits you and you just start crying?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that, so to me, that's revival. And I think that, again, so many people are looking for revival. They cry out for it. And I'm like, all you need to know is Jesus. The stuff, the signs and the wonders, and we sell shirts, heal the sick, raise the dead, cast out devils. Yes, that's part of it. But that's not the Lord.
No, it's not.
He is like, knowing who he is when you truly know him, you read the Bible different. You don't read about Jesus. You start reading him, and you start waking up to love. And when you wake up to love, you stop worrying. You leave that realm. When you wake up to love, your eyes open to where the Lord's at, and you oftentimes see him in the darkest places, full of chaos and full of confusion. That's part of the narrow door.
Places you don't want to go.
The places the carnal mind hates to go. But when you're in revival, or how about in revealing, when you're in the revelation of Jesus, you long to go through the hard things. You long to endure hardship as a good soldier. You long to face the persecution, because every bit of trial, every bit of hardship, every bit of conflict always reveals the Lord in a different way. You would have never seen him through comfort. And to me, that's what revival is the revelation of who Jesus really is. That's what I'm like, man, guys, that's what we need. You don't do an event for that. This is something you see the Lord, and you do it through relationships. Imagine if you did a real revival. Hey, what are we going to do? Let's connect. Let's have dinner together. Let's have coffee together. And let's get so close that we see the Lord.
Yeah. It's good.
Anything? Okay.
As you're talking though, it's definitely, I have tons of thoughts, but one of them is the acknowledgement of those that I know that have walked with the Lord the closest. They're the most humble. They walk in the most humility. And I think that revival, like we were saying, it can feed the flesh and it can feel really good, but true encounters with God, it brings you to a lowly place.
Yeah.
And you start to operate in more honor than you knew was capable. You were capable of, and you start to say, no, I see now. I see Jesus in Reggie, and I see Jesus in Scott and in Marcy, and I want that Jesus to be lifted up. And so you quit competing with one another, right? You quit even comparing yourself with other people, and you start to recognize the gifts that individual people are, and you start to root for them, and you want to actually get underneath them and lift them up so that they can bring about the change in the world that they were created to bring.
That's so good.
That's awesome. It's good.
Yes. Oh, man. I feel the Lord in the room.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times in revival, or I don't want to say a lot of times in revival, I just feel like, I just want to say life.
Yeah.
I just want to say life. A lot of times in life, we feel like that we have to have something or do something better in order for the Lord to dwell with us. Yeah. But that's not him. No. That's not him. He's always been with us. Yeah. He's always there for us. Like the disciples, like they were not perfect men, but they just followed the Lord. They weren't perfect men. They followed the Lord, and the Lord was patient with them. Yeah. And in that patience, they begin to see who he really is because they kept following. They kept following Jesus. And sometimes we can get into a works mode that I have to make things right. I have to do this right. I have to get this in order before the Lord comes and all these things. Like, no, he's with us. And the way you get things in order is just follow him. That's his only request. we put more requests on ourselves, but Jesus' only request when he called the disciples was, follow me.
That's
Yeah.
it.
That was it. Follow me. We like, well, I gotta be a fisher of men. No, follow me and I will make you
Yes.
a fisher of men.
Yeah.
But
The
it's
works of the Lord.
it's about trying to follow him, not our ways. And
Right.
but we don't like, I'm not perfect at that, but it's funny that I've seen the patience of the Lord.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
like when he is want us to do something and we don't do it, but yet seems like every time, I'm just thinking like every time when Peter, when he became like a leader of the church and elder of the church, and I'm just thinking how many times he just looked back and said, wow, like this is what he was telling me about. I finally got it. Like, but when he was walking with them, he didn't really
Right.
Get it.
he didn't get it, but the Lord just trusted that Peter would get it.
Yeah.
And it's just knowing that you've been with a person and that he has deposited something in us and that he trusted the very thing that he deposited.
Yeah.
And he's just waiting for us to realize that he has already deposited something.
Come on.
Like Jesus said, when Peter wanted to stop Jesus for washing his feet, and he was like, no, you have to be, if you want to be a part of me. And he said, wash my whole body. You're already clean.
That's
Peter.
right.
I've already deposited something in you.
Yeah, that's it.
I've already deposited something in you. Just follow my ways. Just follow my heart. And then what's been deposited in you is going to flow out.
Come on now.
It's like you were talking about the seed. Like Jesus is the uncorruptible
He
seed.
is the seed.
Yeah.
He's the uncorruptible seed, and we feel that we have to do things so that his seed will be corrupt.
Yes.
But that's not, if that's it, then he's not the spotless lamb.
That's right.
If like Jesus said it differently. He said what goes inside of man doesn't defile him. What comes out of him defiles him.
Yeah.
It's total opposite of Judeo ethics, of their morals. It was he was totally going against what religious leaders was taught.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we feel like with revival sometimes is we feel like we want to get better, or let's go to this meeting so that we can get better or feel better. And it it touches our soul, but sometimes we want to hold on to those meetings because we know the feeling, it felt great. Like when we get encountered by the Lord, like, I want to keep this, I don't want to let this go.
Oh yeah.
But manna is not supposed to be kept.
That's right.
Oh, that's good.
That's right.
Reggie.
That's
Manna
right.
is never supposed to be kept. When you keep it, just turn into maggots.
Yes.
And it's worthless.
That's
Right.
Yes.
the truth.
And that's what it reminds me of the Bible, the verse that says his mercies are new every morning.
Yeah,
So that means if something's new, you've never been there before.
exactly.
You're learning something different about who the Lord is.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've had so many people email me recently that they ask for, everybody wants process, right? Everybody, tell me how to, man. Give me the formula. And there's no formula. One of the things I found with God, there's no formulas, but you can recognize there are patterns that the Lord does. His ways never change, but his methods do.
Yeah.
And they asked, like, well, how do you get your mind renewed? And I can look at our process, because a mind renewal is not a end all be all. It's a constant thing. And and most of the people that ask me these questions, they say, well, what do I do? Just quote scriptures? Do I just go to another conference? Do I go up to the altar, get prayed for? And what I found, even in our lives, we have, over the last 5-6 years, we've all come to a level of our mind is renewed by basically unlearning what we've learned prior.
Mm-hmm.
And that came not through an event.
No.
That came through relationship.
Yeah.
An experience.
And total experience. And even like for us, when we got in relationship with Brad McClendon, Bob Jones' spiritual son, and we started walking with him. When we started walking with him and getting in a relationship, it made my head pop, because when I'm seeing the Lord in a way I've never saw the Lord. I heard the Lord, and it would offend me. Some of the things that Brad used to say would offend me because it offended my previous thought.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened, maybe if your mind is going to be renewed, it doesn't happen by yourself, but it happens with the people that he places you to walk with, and you can't get that in a large event.
No, you can't.
It doesn't happen in us. So if that's the case, maybe real revival is found at the coffee table.
Yeah,
Yeah.
community.
Jeez. Wow.
No, I was just thinking that was so good, Scott. That was so good. But Richie, going back to what you were talking about as you were talking, you know, you whenever somebody's talking, sometimes I'll have these thoughts pop up that I knew, but I didn't know that I knew. You know, so when you said, you know, manna was for that day, it wasn't meant to be held on to. I realized then, as soon as you said that whatever it is that we do receive, and whatever, if we want to use the term revival, whatever it is that we do receive there, or an encounter with Jesus, an experience with the Lord, or whatever, because we had a major experience with the Lord in Moravian Falls, and the temptation was to stay in that moment.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was a great temptation. However, like you said, manna was for that day. It's you know, it turns to worms thereafter. But if you ingest that manna, it then becomes part of you.
Yes.
And it's in moving forward,
Yes.
and that which you received then becomes part of your working out in your day-to-day life. There's a transformation that happened because of what you received.
Yes.
And so if you don't move forward, if you do try to stay there in that moment and make it a monument, you never fully become transformed by what you've then received, because it's not lived out in your life.
Yeah.
So
There's
good.
never a chance
Really good.
to walk that thing out. And you know, it for me, I know what I received there. It's still unfolding. There was so much that happened for me, but it's still revealing itself at different opportunities that come up through, you know, interacting with people. But I think that's the key too, though, to revival is realizing that true transformation, sustaining transformation takes place. You're not the same. If you go somewhere and you experience something, but then a few days later you're no different than you were before you went, then what were you doing?
Right.
What really happened?
It was a momentary pleasure.
Adrenaline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I don't know where to pass it to anymore.
I love all these technical challenges. You know, it just speaks to me that we're actually talking about things that God wants to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
It's just part of the warfare. Right?
So let's stop saying send revival and just
Yes.
said, Lord, reveal Jesus.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
And help us to
Yeah.
perceive when you do. You know, that's one thing Sunday morning I just kept praying during worship. Help us to perceive you. Because again, we get so caught up in adrenaline, we get so caught up in that feel good, like we can, like you said, we can miss the Lord, and this is not the season for that. We need to grab hold of
That's the
him while he
truth.
will be found. You know, we need to lay hold of the person of Jesus and let him walk us through, you know, blindly even.
Yeah.
Walk us through the darkness.
Yeah. You know, sorry. I actually put this up on Facebook the other day. You know, I've heard it said so many times, you know, if you want to know who you are, you have to know who Jesus is. You
Yeah.
have to know who Jesus is.
That's good.
And because you're hidden in Christ, you're hidden in him. So if you don't know who you are, it's proof then that you don't know who he is.
Yeah.
That's so good.
So and I don't mean that in a way that's condemning. I mean that in a way in which, if you're consistently asking yourself, you know, who am I, Lord? Who did you make me to be? What's my plan? What's my purpose? What is it that you want me to do with my life? That is your sign that then you need a revelation of Jesus.
Yes.
And the thing is, guys, that you're never going to stop having a new revelation of Jesus.
Yeah.
Because he's eternal.
Yeah.
there's always even into the next life, if you want to call it the next life. I think that it's eternity now. We're living in eternity now, and it's just going to be a progression from the time that you're reborn or you're born again. But if you want to say the next life, even in the next life, you're still going to continuously have a new revelation of Jesus. It's never going to stop.
Right.
It's never going to stop.
That's why they're throwing crowns at his feet.
I just, when you were saying that, I was thinking of the scripture when Jesus asked the disciples, "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter said, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And he said, "Flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven." And when he said that to him, then he told Peter his identity.
Yes. Yes.
Can they hear me?
I don't know. Just
But-
in case.
But then they told Peter his identity. He said, "You are Peter, and upon this rock I shall build my church." Basically, you have a revelation of me,
Yes.
and then from that revelation, I'm going to tell you your true identity. And upon that revelation of you know who I am, you know who you are, and the gates of hell should not prevail, because you know me. And when you know me, you know you.
Yeah.
That's so
Because
good.
I will reveal.
Yes.
I will reveal you.
Yes.
Because he's like the Father. That's what the Father revealed Jesus to us, and then Jesus revealed us to us.
That's it.
Yes.
That's what it's all about. It's just knowing who He is.
That's it.
And
That's
He was
it.
like, "I'm going to return the favor. Here you are."
You know, that makes me think, and this is the second time you've spoken, and I've thought about this, so I'm just going to share. That makes me think about the mustard seed and how we have made, the faith of a mustard seed about you having to work out, or stir up your own faith, but that's not the truth. The mustard seed was always a tree. The mustard seed knew it was a tree. I mean, it's just the function of a mustard seed is to turn into a tree. And so it didn't sit there and doubt itself. It didn't sit there and try to work anything out. It just was. And that's what the Lord has done for us. Like He has put in us His incorruptible seed. Like He has put that in us. And all we have to do is walk with Jesus. And that thing is going to bring forth fruit in our lives.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, He is the mustard seed.
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was talking about Him.
Yep.
Mhm.
Wow. So I guess this all sums up where the question was asked: what is revival?
Jesus.
So it's just simply Jesus.
It's just Jesus.
Just again, that's just Jesus.
Yeah.
Times people have said, "What are you teaching about?"
Jesus.
And again, He's so amazing, so
Right.
magnificent. You're never going to be able to really express who He truly is,
Right.
only to a degree.
Right. And you have to experience Him. You can't, like, words fail.
Yeah, it
You
totally
just
fails.
have to
Oh.
experience Him.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing about it is whenever you do experience, I mean, just the smallest sliver of who He is, your carnal mind is so undone. It is like railing every argument against what you are physically experiencing at that moment. But your carnal mind is like railing against it. But yet even though your mind is fighting against the experience of who He is, in your gut where your spirit lives, that is real. That is Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so overwhelming of everything that He is, that undoes everything that you're not.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
Because we've been taught so by the spirit of this world, so much of the spirit of this world will teach you who you are, or its definition of who you should be, but that's not who you are. So then Jesus comes along and He reveals Himself, and it undoes everything that you're not.
Yeah.
Come on.
But the carnal mind is fighting against it because it's totally being unraveled and it's crashing down. But all you're left with then is the acceptance and the overwhelming love.
Yes.
It's words can't describe it.
No.
I think that's actually what offends people.
Right.
The Lord is actually, when He is revealed, when the real Jesus is revealed, any bit of religiosity or formula mindset will absolutely manifest and get mad
Yeah.
because they think that God can't be that good.
Right.
God can't be that kind.
Yeah.
And so real revival is simply this, guys. The revelation of Jesus.
Amen. Well, thank you guys so much for having this conversation with me today. I definitely believe it's going to bless a lot of people because, again, we're trying to grab hold of things that are not the Lord, and we're going to learn though.
Yeah, that's
He's
right.
teaching us. Like we're going to
We're
learn.
gonna get there.
We're going to get there.
We gonna make
We're
it.
going to make it.
We gonna make it.
We gonna
Praise the
make
Lord.
it.
We gonna make it.
But thank you all for tuning in. And yeah, everybody, if you're listening to this today, definitely flood Scott's page on Facebook with happy birthday messages.
I'm trying to like and love every single
yeah.
one of them, and it's like I don't want somebody to get mad if I miss it.
I don't think that you can like and love all of that, but yeah, definitely flood his page, let him know how special he is and all of that, and send him much love. And we'll talk to you guys later.
All right.
I